Welcome to this edition of Cigar Chat. In this edition, I want to go ahead and showcase the rich and beautiful history of the Canary Islands, Spain, which is where my ancestors came from. A small island called La Gomera, which is located in the archipelago of the Canary Islands. There's 7 islands out there, and the island right next door is called Tenerife. You're going to see in the video the amazing connection between Cuba and the Canary Islands, the rich history between both places. The Canary Islanders were the ones that actually developed most of the agricultural industry in Cuba. Sugar cane, tobacco, of course, which is my heritage. And you're going to see some other beautiful things that they do in the Canary Islands, which is very close to my heart. Thank God I can go back at least 3 or 4 generations in my family back to the Canary Islands, specifically to the island of La Gomera. That's where my family's from. And interestingly enough, in Cuba, a lot of Canary Islanders married other Canary Islanders, and that kind of just became its own little, subculture within the Cuban culture. But a lot of Cubans can trace their ancestry back to the Canary Islands. So stay tuned. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. The Canary Islands are a group of islands that are located in the Atlantic Ocean, right off the coast of Africa. And my family actually hails from a small island called La Gomera. Before they went to Cuba, we have about 3 or 4 generations of my family that hail from that island. Today you can access La Gomera by way of Tenerife. You can take a ferry from the island of Tenerife over to La Gomera and take in the beautiful scenery and landscape there. The islands are mostly a subtropical set of islands. They grow all sorts of fruits, vegetables, and tobacco was actually something that was grown on the island of La Palma, a little bit in La Gomera as well. But the Canary Islanders were actually the ones that went to Cuba in the late 1900s and early 20th century, and they were pretty much the ones responsible for the agricultural business in Cuba and for developing the tobacco industry in Cuba, something that they knew how to do pretty well over in the islands. As you can see, they have bananas and very nice tropical landscaping, very mountainous terrain. The islands are also volcanic. There's an active volcano on the island of Tenerife called El Teide, which is a landmark in Spain. A lot of the Canary Islanders that went to Cuba actually settled in the central part of the island, right by where my family was from, that area around Santa Clara, Placetas, central Cuba. And some of them also settled over in the western part of the island. The tobacco that you guys see here now is actually grown on the island of La Palma in the Canary Islands. And the Canary Islander tobacco is actually very famous, mostly in Europe, a lot of parts of Spain, and a lot of parts of Europe, they consume tobacco or cigars made in the Canary Islands. That gentleman there, he's picking the leaves. And as you can see, their harvesting out there is a little bit different than Cuba. They actually hang them outside for a few days. And then, once the color changes, then they do bring them into the curing barn and they cure them there. That was a little bit different than what they do in Cuba. But the Canary Islanders went to Cuba. Very strong work ethic. All my family members, they worked in agriculture. They grew tobacco. They harvested sugarcane. I mean, they were very, very hardworking people. As you can see here, they're selecting the different leaves and sorting them, and they're getting them ready. That process right there is called sowing the leaves. And usually they sow them and then they put them into gavillas, and then they make manojos. And what they do is then they prepare these big burlap bags with the tobacco. But of course, they do age them in the curing barn as well. Very good tobacco from the Canary Islands. So a lot of the tobacco that they grow there, they grow it in an area called Breña Alta in the island of La Palma. And the cigars are known as Palmero or Palmeran cigars, which is funny because, what they would do is they would bring in, back in the day, they would bring in some of the leaves from Cuba, and then they would make their own blend of Tabaco La Palma or Tabaco Palmero, and then they would blend it with the Havana tobacco. But it's funny because, you see, what happened was when the discovery of the New World, they discovered tobacco, and consequently some of the seeds were brought back to the Canary Islands, and then they started harvesting and growing their own their own Canary Island tobacco there. Now fast forward, I don't know, 500 years later, a lot of the Cubans who were of Canary Islander blood, Canarios or Isleños as we call them in Cuba, a lot of them migrated back to the Canary Islands. So there was always a strong connection between Cubans and Canary Islanders, because I mean really they're basically, I guess you could say that's the motherland. I mean, not only is it from Spain, but specifically a lot of Cubans can trace their ancestry back to the Canary Islanders, as well as other regions of Spain, Galicia, Asturias. You know, there's Cubans of all sorts of Spanish extraction. See that right there? Those are the gavillas. And as you can see, they're inspecting wrapper leaves right there. These two folks. They're inspecting the wrapper leaves. They're sorting them out and getting them ready for wrapping them. This gentleman, he's actually selecting the best leaves, ironing them out. Tabaco, you know, they're planchándolo. And these guys are the sorters right here, is what it is. But anyway, there is a lot of history, a lot of strong connection between the Canary Islands and Cuba. Always has been. Even to this day, you know, a lot of Cubans migrate back to the Canary Islands when they leave Cuba. But in my family, they were always very proud of their Canary Islander roots. And like I said, strong agricultural roots in Cuba. It's still fascinating to see that they're still working with the tobacco the same way that they did, you know, 100, 200 years ago. As you can see, they put them in the burlap bags. See, that's already aged tobacco right there. That's getting ready to be taken to the factory, you know, to be processed and rolled. See, that gentleman is getting the actual gavillas, and he's wetting them, preparing them to be used for the rolling. And that's a process you have to do anytime that you get the tobacco and you get it ready to be used. You have to moisten it and wet it to be able to use it. This process that this gentleman is doing right now is the deveining or stripping process. And this is when he takes the center vein out of the wrapper leaf. And by doing this, then, you know, basically he has a left and a right side of the wrapper. And then those are both used for wrapping the actual cigars. Now, a lot of factories have somebody just doing the stripping process. Some of the smaller factories, it's the same person that is wrapping the cigars that's actually doing the stripping process, which in Spanish is called despalillo. Here is the roller putting the tobacco in a binder, ready to be put inside the mold, and then it'll get pressed. Once it's in the mold, it gets pressed, probably for about an hour on each side. Gets taken out, and then it gets pressed on the other side for an hour in those wooden molds that you see right there. And then basically by putting it inside the press, what that does is it makes a nice cylindrical shape, and the press brings it together, you know, pushes the mold down, and the cigar basically starts to take its form. These rollers that you see right now, they're preparing the wrapper leaf, and they're basically ready to apply that wrapper leaf on the cigars that have already come out of the press and out of the mold. And this is the final step in making a handmade cigar. Once the cigars are made, the final step is applying the cigar rings to the cigars and putting them in the boxes, which, as you can see here, we're actually doing that to our Don Ramon series cigars, which I made in honor of my father. That's the final step, is the packaging, of course, of the cigars. Another really interesting technique that they have in the Canary Islands is the whistling or silbo technique.
Sounds like these can often be heard on the mountains of La Gomera. But the islanders aren't just whistling for fun, they are communicating with one another across great distances. What? To be honest, I haven't understood anything. But that makes me sort of curious, because that's the way how people can communicate over here. Unbelievable, I think, but a good reason to listen a little bit closer. Eugenio Darias has been teaching the whistled language for some time. I set out with him to discover the secret of the Silbo Gomero among the steep volcanic slopes and the deep ravines. The island is thinly populated with a scattering of little mountain villages. An estimated 20,000 people know the whistled language. It originated among the peaks reaching up to 1,500 meters high. Eugenio Darias is known as one of the island's most experienced whistlers.
Toda esta parte por aquí era de mi abuelo. Nosotros veníamos aquí con los animales veníamos. Todo esto antes era a base de silbo. Nosotros siempre nos comunicábamos a base de... Aquí en La Gomera existe el silbo por la orografía que tiene la isla. La isla es muy difícil de caminar porque hay mucho barranco. Y entonces, pues claro, nosotros con el silbo lo que hacíamos era ahorrar trabajo. O sea, no teníamos que venir caminando desde aquella montaña, caminando hacia abajo para hablar contigo y luego otra vez caminar hacia arriba, sino con el silbo desde arriba hubiese desaparecido.
For that, you need to be able to whistle through your fingers. Otherwise, you can't produce sounds loud enough to be heard over in the next valley. But this proves to be a challenge for me.
Exactamente, eso es, así.
Silbo masters can make themselves understood at distances up to 3 kilometers.
What you guys are going to see now is what's called punto guajiro or punto cubano. It's a type of poetry, and they call it a controversia, which means the two poets go back and forth, and you know, they talk about different aspects of their life, sometimes romantics. It's really a funny back and forth, but it's the typical country music of Cuba, which really has its origins in the Canary Islands as well, to the canturías. So stay tuned.
con su deber y realiza este quehacer porque su isla lo llama. Y aquí está en este programa que a él tanto ya extrañó. Y ven, Francisco volvió a sus natales montañas para secar las pestañas que el incendio humedeció. Camino del fuego. Y a un deseo me entrego, ojalá que aquí concuerde. Que esto solo se recuerde y aquellos niños pequeños hagan realidad sus sueños en una gomera verde. Esa frase es la genuina, así que no la descuide, que los que él dice no olviden a la isla colombina. Dímenla de esquina a esquina, que es lo que Pacho quisiera, que demostró a su manera este enorme verseador, el mejor embajador que tiene